Developing effective event tactics. We want to define our goals and measure. We want to find out who the target audience is, how you should engage them, and you want to engineer their journey. This is the most important part of curb to carpet. You can have the best looking booth. These gentlemen here talked about the content, what's in the back of the booth. You can talk about the brand identifiers. Are you a big brand, a little brand, or a mid-sized brand? That really doesn't matter. It's understanding your audience, how they consume information, and what do they do with that information. How is that story being told, and how do you want to tell it to them? That's the journey that you're trying to create here. And part of that is about pre-event, on-site, and post-event tactics. We're going to define our goals a little bit, just before I get a little water here. And we're going to look at a few things. When you're defining your goals and you're defining your target audience, I look at my creative team and the first commandment in our line is know thy audience. It doesn't matter what story we're trying to tell, who we're trying to tell it to, or what we're saying. We have to understand who they are first. And again, how they consume that information. So in order to be successful, you must define what your goals are and who you're speaking them to. And at the end of every day, measure your effectiveness on that experience. Now, what do I mean by that? Most conferences today, conferences, trade shows, however you want to say it, it's face-to-face marketing, are more than one day. They're 2 to 3 days. So if you've set out a goal for yourselves to hit a specific number of targets, and you want to make sure that you're getting to these people and you're saying this message and you're counting business cards in your bowl, so to speak. I hope you're not doing that, but we'll get to that in a minute. Evaluate yourself. Evaluate your booth staff at the end of the day. At the very end of the day, when the doors close, when people are leaving, you all stop exactly where you are in your tracks. Assess your environment. Bring the group together and say, how was today? How many did you expect to talk to? How many did you talk to? What were the levels of conversation? Somebody needs to be looking at your overall space. Now, if it's a 10 by 10 space, that's a pretty easy space to evaluate. If it's something larger, you're going to need some insights from a few other of your colleagues. Where were the hot corners in your space? Where did you see heavy traffic? Were there any traffic roadblocks? Were there opportunities missed for conversations because of technology or the lack thereof? So you want to start to engineer your space to do all this and evaluate it and make some slight adjustments. So for the next day, if you notice the hot corner was over here and you really wanted it to be there, if it doesn't take an act of Congress to get something moved, if it doesn't cost you $1 million to get something moved, if anybody here knows all about install and dismantle, you'll know what I mean by that, then see if you can adjust something in your space effectively. If it's just a message that you're trying to get across, have your reps, have your booth staff, have your trained people, your subject matter experts, talk to it in a different way or talk about it in a different way. Now, conversely, if somebody says, well, the level of conversation was down here, we were hoping it was going to be up here. Maybe your audience isn't ready for a conversation there, and maybe you need to bring it down to this level. So now you have to adjust how you communicate with your audiences. What is the lingo, the language, and the vernacular that you're using? Is it effective? Is it going over their heads or past their heads, or is it hitting square right on the nose? Make sense? Excellent. You want to define your goals by asking, what are the event objectives? How do they relate to our brand? Who are we targeting? Again, know thy audience. What impacts do we want to have, and how do we measure success? How many people do measurement at the end of each of their conferences, trade shows? And of that, how much of it is technology-based or just plain old asking your staff or counting qualified leads? Technology, raise your hands. Excellent. Old style, paper, conversations, great. That's good. That's a good mix. It's really important to measure and find out what your ROI is, return on investment, so that you can understand where your next footprint needs to lie, where your next change needs to be. And if you can do that, like I said, on the first day, you'll adjust and have a better result on the second day. Write them down and bring them to every planning meeting. Your face-to-face marketing shouldn't be an afterthought. It shouldn't be, oh, we got to go there next week. You should be planning out this environment and this conversation and this story months in advance, as early as you possibly can. That gives you enough time to do the research on your audience, on the environment in which you're going to be presenting. Where do you sit on the show hall? That's really important. Where's Action Alley, as we like to call it? You know, Action Alley in, let's say, a Walmart. It's that main aisle where they just throw in all the pallets of stuff that's shrink wrapped or sleeved and so forth. I used to be a package designer, so I know all about Action Alley and Walmart. I've been to Bentonville. Check, got the hat, t-shirt, everything. You need to understand where that main traffic flow is in the space. If there are poster sessions happening somewhere, if this is a pharmaceutical congress, if it is a consumer products type of an event, where are the hot corners? Where are your competitors? Are you going to try to steal traffic from your competitors, or are you hoping that you're going to drive-bys? That's really important, is to know where you are in your space. That's why you need to plan out early on, so that you can take the appropriate tactics to to engineer your space for engaging conversations.